what I realized was that I was questioning. So, I think the key term now is imposter syndrome. I was really questioning, do I belong here? Especially after John passed, my confidence went to an ultimate low. And I didn't know that that was going to be a symptom of my grief, but it was. And it really triggered that childhood pain of questioning, like, what is wrong with me? And do I belong in this space? And through working with Raquel, like, she really identified that for me and was like, you need to see these people who you're having a lot of tension with at work as triggering that childhood trauma of not being able to fully be who you're meant to be. And then, I guess self-evaluating, like, is this true? No, this is not true. Am I meant to be here? Yes. Have I worked hard to be here? Do I deserve to be here? Yes, I do.
Welcome to Why She's Winning with your host, Christy Rutherford, a master of office politics and self-care advocacy. Christy's clients have received over $10 million in salary raises in a pandemic. Surprised that women are still getting paid during these challenging times? It's possible for you too. You can have it all if you believe you deserve it. Christy and her guests will assist you with that. Let's get started.
Welcome everyone to Why She's Winning. I'm your host, Christy Rutherford, looking finer than ever. Good grief. Are you looking at me right now, Renee? I am here with the amazing Renee Turner. So let's talk about what Renee has accomplished in her career. She's a corporate litigator at a top New York City law firm where she represents corporations, boards of directors, and financial institutions in state and federal courts. In connection with regulatory investigations by the U.S. Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission. She also maintains an active pro bono practice providing legal services to low-income women and victims of domestic violence. Prior to her career as a litigator, Renee clerked at the District Court of the Virgin Islands and the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. Renee currently serves as an advisory board member for Best Buddies New York, a nonprofit dedicated to creating opportunities for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. She also chairs the Gun Violence Prevention Working Group for the law firm Anti-Racism Alliance. In 2020, she was selected to participate in the Leadership Council on Legal Diversity Pathfinder program, which trains high-performing, of course, early career attorneys. Last month, she was featured in the Lawyers of Color annual Hot List, which recognizes mid-career attorneys excelling in the legal profession. Welcome, Renee.
Hi, Christy. Thank you for having me today.
We had to get Renee together in all this light. I was like, we're going to show this fineness because Renee is on fire today. So I was like, turn it around. We got to get all this glory on the screen. So, Renee, I've been waiting for this interview since last February, which is when you started.
Yes, that's correct.
So the goal is, today we're going to talk about shifting from grief to gratitude. But what was going on with you initially when you decided to reach out, to us to work with us?
Yes. So when I reached out last year, I was about a year and a half out from losing my husband, John, who passed from cancer when he was 36. I was 34 at the time, and we had two children who were 2 and 4 at the time of his passing. It was unexpected and relatively quick. And I was at, I would say, the lowest point in my life. I was on autopilot. I was trying to maintain a very demanding career while still being a present mom to 2 very young children suffering through grief as well as my own. And I was bitter, angry, and I just didn't know where to turn to next. And then I came across Christy.
So, the thing about, Dana, your Eagle crew, is writing a book, and I just wrote her forward, and I was talking about how a lot of women, when we're going on the pursuit of success, nobody really talks about the challenges and the sacrifices, right? And we're just trying to go get it. And then when you have devastating loss, like you've had, it's hard to slow down and process because we're still expected really by ourselves and other people to continue to show up like nothing happened. So right. There's this melting, and then you come to work kind of put together, but you're still melting, and we never have time to decompartmentalize like what's really going on and face it to move on. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So when you came, we came to talk about your job.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really like, how can I show up better at work?
Right.
While ignoring the goo, you know, the melted candle that had like one part of the wick left, you know.
Right.
So did I say something to you? Know, people always say, y'all say I'll be offensive. Did I say something to you? I think I was nice about it. I'm not sure. But what was one of the things I would say in our initial conversation that kind of sparked, you know, a light bulb that went on in your head on what was really going on and what needed to change?
Yes. So I did reach out for professional reasons, but once we started to talk, it was an instant deep dive into my upbringing, childhood, and you asked very pointed questions that revealed what I had experienced throughout my life. And for the first time, someone identified for me basically that there were a trilogy of traumas that I had experienced that I had never fully healed from. And I was, drowning in so much grief. And for me, it was the light bulb went off and like, yes, this makes sense. And I have to do the work to heal all of these traumas in order to get to the place in my life where I want to be.
Hey, Christy Rutherford here. Do you want to learn how to ask for and get a 30% raise without getting another degree? Look, Black women are the most educated and the least paid. That should tell you that math is not mathing. The degree is not the path to the next level. It's actually learning how to articulate the value and take credit for the work that you've already done. So I want to invite you to get my free case study at changenowwithchristy.com. Just get the information, use it, and take the money out of the hands of your employers and put it into your household because you already deserve it. You just have to know how to ask for it. Again, changenowwithchristy.com. I can't wait for you to get this insight, use it, and get the money that you deserve. Take care.
You're on mute.
Okay, great. What advice do you have for, leaders, right, who have experienced loss? Because we're all 30-something, 40-something, like regardless of how long you've lived, we've all lost someone, or we're going to lose someone. Or, a guy I was talking to, a couple of years ago was talking about preparing for grief as his parents were preparing for that, right? What advice do you have for leaders who are on the professional track that have had loss and they haven't slowed down to address it? What advice do you have for them?
Sure. So I think the advice is that it's really important to heal in the moment as much as possible. So I think for me, what was creating so much distraught in my life was my husband. He was basically my sigh of relief. So once we started dating, got married, I just felt so protected and grounded in a sense of security, and that this person loved me fully, that I had this life that I always dreamed of. But what was missing was healing from childhood trauma that had, I guess, transcended through the years, but was never resolved. And so now, as at that time, 34-year-old senior associate at a big law firm, handling multi-million-dollar cases, I'm literally, my professional life was not reflective of my personal life, where I really struggled to wake up every day.
So he was like, finally, the relief. If we want to talk a little bit about like losing your parents, like losing your mom at a really young age, and then losing your father, or your aunt, and then your dad. And so you finally found this security blanket, right, where you can finally breathe, and then that's gone while you're trying to work. So unpack, your story just a little bit. If you choose, you could be like, no, move on. But I would want, you're like the poster child for what properly healing your grief and moving through it, right? And I want to talk about that, as we discuss, but like tell the listeners a little bit about your journey and where you are right now.
Yeah. Well, my dad's still alive, thankfully. But my mom, no, it's okay. My mom passed. I'm a twin, and my mom passed when we were 8 weeks old from a brain aneurysm. And so we had that initial trauma that even as babies, and I've learned from, thanks to Christy and working with Althea, that although I was an infant, that still affected me in terms of my development, emotional development. And so I grew up with that loss of a mom. And then I had a step parent that wasn't, I think, for me, was not the step parent that I needed is as I was growing up and developing. And what I learned was that she stripped a lot of what makes me who I am. So in trying to mold me into a meek, submissive, child who only said yes and no and didn't speak her mind, I grew up like not being fully who I am, which is strong-willed, passionate, ambitious, driven. Like this is who I am. And it makes me great. And I had to realize, like, I don't have to shrink for anybody else to feel comfortable. I need to fully be who I am.
So your step, because you're a Leo, you and your sister. You a full Leo too, right?
Yeah.
Like we always talk about, Leos, we're egotistical. You be like, you on the cusp. You like, you were born in July, you were born in late August, you don't count. You're like full all caps Leo.
Yes.
So you have, and naturally we're a little special, but we're strong-willed, we're opinionated, and your stepmother in your formative years was trying to make you a sheep, pretty much.
You're right. Right.
So how did that, because we had to go back and reconcile the books on that, right? Because it affected in your formative years how you saw yourself and you're fighting, but the fighting can only last for so long before you could succumb and then you get back up. So how did that, I would say, show up in some of your personal and professional relationships?
Well, I would say that it showed up predominantly professionally. And what I realized was that I was questioning. So, I think the key term now is imposter syndrome. I was really questioning, do I belong here? Especially after John passed, my confidence went to an ultimate low. And I didn't know that was going to be a symptom of my grief, but it was. And it really triggered that childhood pain of questioning, like, what is wrong with me? And do I belong in this space? And through working with Raquel, like she really identified that for me and was like, you need to see these people who you're having a lot of tension with at work as triggering that childhood trauma of not being able to fully be who you're meant to be. And then, like, I guess self-evaluating, like, is this true? No, this is not true. Am I meant to be here? Yes. Have I worked hard to be here? Do I deserve to be here? Yes, I do.
Oh, that's so good. Let's unpack that a little bit, because a lot of times, the imposter syndrome is this word that women adopt, which is not true, because you're talking about something in the moment when really the root of it is far behind. People treat you how you show up. So if you're showing up flickering between a sheep and a lioness, that's dangerous, one.
Right.
by animal kingdom standards, right? Like one moment you're a sheep, and that's not going to last so long because you're like Leo. And then when you act like a Leo, people don't know what to do. And then you act like a sheep. And then they get comfortable and they cross the line. And then they're missing an arm and a leg, right? And then you're like, well, which one am I? Because you're kind of adjusting to suit the room. And it's all inner chaos. And you don't feel like you belong because it's the inner battle, not necessarily what people are prescribing on you. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, exactly. And
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say what I noticed was that instead of fighting back and asserting myself as the true Renee Turner, I was in my mind thinking, okay, there's this tension here and this person doesn't deserve the full Renee. And so I would be very, complacent and, it is what it is. And in working with Vision Finder, I pushed myself to assert myself and say, like, no, this is what it is, and then show up fully. And that changed how my happiness at work.
So let's unpack that a little bit, because there is this article that's going around, which annoys me completely, that says, corporate America should embrace Black women introverts. And I'd be like, y'all ain't no introverts. Y'all playing small, right? Mm-hmm. That's lionesses acting like a sheep, which creates a toxic work environment in our mind, is because we can't show up fully. A lioness that's chilling is more acceptable to herself, and that's just her, owning who she is, and acceptable to others than a lioness who's unpredictable, because that's dangerous, right?
Right.
So how did unpacking that, and now I would say, what is the difference between how you show up at work today versus how you were showing up, last February? Like, what's the stark difference in that, and how you're received by other people?
Yes. So the difference between how I'm showing up at work is I'm very intentional about who I give my time to, how I present myself in the office, at home, doing remote work, and the type and quality of work that I'm presenting. And so I just enjoy my job more now because I know that I can fully be who I am, and whoever aligns with that will be a part of my circle, and whoever doesn't will fall to the wayside. And I'm okay with that. And I think that I garnered a lot of respect within my institution because I do show up fully, because I do advocate for more junior people in my firm. And I want them to know that they can truly show up the way that they need to. But I also think it's really important to, since I have had a lot of grief and trauma, I take what are called grief days. So like I fully, if I cannot, to a certain extent, fully function that day, like I take a break and I let myself feel the feelings. And what I was doing before was I was just like trying to push through, and it was fruitless. Like I would be miserable. I wouldn't produce the work product that I wanted to. But now I let myself feel the feelings and then move on.
I know we talked about it at some point in the program. I was supposed to have it ready, Renee. You know how I do. I know I was changing my shirt, but shifting from grief to gratitude. And so it's like, if you're trying to push down the grief to suppress it or move through it or ignore it, is lingering there, and you're not that good for maybe a week.
Right.
As opposed to saying, you know what, I feel it, let me feel it, move through it. So it's like walk over the coals quickly, as opposed to standing on them and ignoring that.
Right.
You're standing on hot coals, right? In the fire walk that Tony Robbins and all, like you're actually standing on them and you're ignoring it, which you're creating further damage, to where you are. So what's one one piece of advice or two pieces of advice that you can give to the listeners about that, like that technique of how do you feel it and then move through it? Like, what does that look like? What is that process like?
Yeah. So what I've learned is I had to learn how to give myself grace and compassion. So we as humans, I think, are naturally inclined to be compassionate about other people's struggles. But what I found was that I was spiraling in the moment in my grief because I was not saying, like, of course you feel like crap today, or of course this thing that happened triggered something that upset you, and not allowing myself to feel those feelings, like you said. And then it just, increases until I was left just incapable of fully functioning. And so I learned how to acknowledge that I deserve grace and compassion, and I can give it to myself, and I don't have to seek it outwardly all the time.
And that's huge, because you said it. We're always doing it for other people. We don't do it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And once you said, you know what, I deserve it too, from me, because we get so stuck on what other people should give us in the moment that we're not expressing, because we can't be weak. You're a lioness. You're a leader. Like you're Renee Turner. You're the Renee Turner. Let's be clear. Like Renee can't be weak ever. But there's a difference. What's the difference, I would say, between, and this is what we don't do well at work. We don't ever want to be seen as weak or a victim. So what I would say, what's the difference in being weak and giving yourself grace?
Yeah. So I think, honestly, the word I would use is being vulnerable. So I never wanted to show vulnerability. Like I always had it together. And I analogize it to, if you're in deep water and all you can see is somebody's head like floating above the water, and they look peaceful and they look put together, but underneath they're like furiously kicking their feet to stay above water. That was me. Like everyone saw me as like really put together, like, wow, Renee's so strong. Like she's got this. I don't have to show up for her. but I'm drowning, just trying to stay above water. And I'm like, doesn't anybody see how I need help? But of course they didn't, because I'm not sharing. And so what I changed was being vulnerable and being like, here's where I am in my life. Here's what I'm going through. And hopefully you can be understanding about that. But I had to set boundaries for myself so that I can continue to survive and be the woman I want to be for myself, the mom I want to be for my children, etc.
How was that received? Right? Because we have this strong, terrified fear of, if we advocate for ourselves, somebody's going to like stab you in the back. So how was that? What was that like? And I know that's a process that you and Raquel worked on. Like, how do you stand up for yourself and just ask people to give you grace? Like, what was that like to experience? And then what was the receptivity of that?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, it was frightening to let my guard down in that way. But once I did it, it's, like once you keep doing things over and over, you start to lose that anxiety about doing it. And so once I took that initial step and the receptivity was warm and understanding and acknowledging, like, yes, like we get it, and take the time that you need to heal, to do what you need to do. I realized like I was really harming myself by not being vulnerable and trying to be so strong and act like I have it all together when, I did, but I didn't.
Hey, Christy Rutherford here. I want to tell you about my resume course, How to Use the Superpower Method to Write an Irresistible Resume to Land You a High-Paying Job. If you can't figure out why you can't get to the next level, if you think that there are barriers to your success, that's not it. If you haven't learned how to adequately take credit for the work that you've done, if you don't know how to articulate it and even give it to a resume writer that you've paid $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to, if you haven't given them the right information, then how can they output something that is of quality and value? So go ahead, get this course. It's less than $50. Get the information, use it, and write an irresistible resume that will get you the salary that you deserve today. So click on the link on around this video or go to thesuperpowermethod.com. Get it, use it, get paid what you deserve today.
So I wanted to back up on that because I remember when our first conversation, you were like shattered pieces. I'd have touched you, you would have busted to 1,000 pieces. So I'm almost sure I ain't dragged you like I typically do to other women, right? Yeah. But that was, you thought, I don't want to ask this question. Is like, how did it feel to be seen and not judged for that fragile state? Because you were like, not even like glass, like a bubble. We touch you like, boop, like it's over, right? So what did that feel like to be seen? Because, and then I want to know that. And then the second part is, what advice do you have for women who are walking around just like you were, saying that this is okay, when that to exist like that was not okay?
Right. So I think in terms of, so I was diagnosed with high functioning depression, and I had never really heard that term before. And I didn't want to identify as being depressed, but I knew that there was something that I needed to acknowledge about what I was experiencing. And going through your program and talking to you, like the first time that we spoke, you identified for me my traumas, but you also said, and it was something I really needed to hear, was like, Renee, you made it. Because I remember you asked me like what my salary was and what I did for a profession. And you were like, you don't have to keep trying to prove yourself. Like, you've already made it. And I was like, yeah, I have. But it was, no one had ever said that to me. And so I was just like chasing after more and more and more. And like, no, like I can relax. I can exist in this wonderful career. I can be the mom I want to be. I can live where I want to live. Like, I don't have to struggle anymore. So that was something I really needed. And then going into the group and being with Raquel and the other women, and I entered my cohort after they had already been in sessions for a couple of weeks. And so that was a little nerve-wracking because, they had already started to do some work, but the receptivity and warmth of the women that I did this work with is something I can't even describe in words. Like, my heart is so full that I know these women, that they were so compassionate and did not judge my experience or what I had gone through, and extremely supportive.
So let's talk about the group, right? Because wounded women, we ain't gonna admit that we wounded ever. Ever. Because the wounded animal is more likely to be attacked by other, hyenas. Right. And so we're walking around, afraid to, be vulnerable, and we definitely don't have time to unpack our stuff. And we, don't even recognize that we made it because we're struggling, wanting to get to like the next thing. So what was that, I want you to unpack a little bit about being around other women who, we deal in the business of badass women over here, to see that they had some stuff too. Like, what was that like? What was that like?
Well, in this process, I felt very alone and isolated. And so to enter this space, a safe space with women who everyone had their own journey, right? But we all connected on A, trying to better ourselves, and B, being vulnerable enough to share where we were in our lives and what we had experienced and all of it. And I think what I took away from the group that I was in the most was Raquel. Raquel was still going through her journey, and she shared that with us. And it was so eye-opening to see, like, even once you get to a stage of healing, like, you're still going through it. And for her to share that with us, I think was really transformative for a lot of us, all of us, honestly. And I just appreciated that. Just the level of transparency was incredible.
Yeah, we're never really done, ever, right? There's always another level. So we got Stephanie here. Did you ever meet Denise? You got to meet Denise. Denise, you got to come to Atlanta. You got to stop playing and get out here in these streets. But so you got the tribe, right? Because we show up. The tribe is showing up in the background. So what advice do you have for women who are lonely in leadership? Because we implode here first, right? Because we're typically the only ones, in our organization. We're the only ones in our family. And what we think that as we get higher and higher in leadership and we get more accolades and we get more degrees, that we're going to continue to, I think, keep that commonality, and we'll have more commonality, but it actually is the reverse. And women don't talk about it. We actually become super paranoid because of now you have to maintain the illusion of this perfect person, and we're like shattered on the inside.
Right.
I don't know if I asked a question. Go ahead.
Well, I think you said advice for women in leadership. And I think as a result of working with Vision Finder, I've developed a level of confidence and knowing that having a network and a support system is crucial to my continued professional development. And so for me now, I feel confident enough to seek out those relationships, to, identify with other Black women, other Black men in my profession who are doing the work that I am doing, and just to lean on them. And it goes back to that vulnerability of the other night I went to an event just specifically for lawyers, and I shared, I'm a widowed mom, and it's been hard for the last 2 years, but here I am showing up at this event, and I'm here and I want to talk to you. But like, it really forces people to let their guard down and let you in.
So what advice do you have for people, who have lost a spouse, right? What are 2 or 3 things that they can do? Because we see it on LinkedIn, like, all the time. And I screenshot some of the people and send it to you. I'll be like, my God, like, and they don't know, like, how to get out of the bed in the morning, right? And a year later, they're not unpacking it. Or it's, a week out. What advice do you have for them? And then what are 1 or 2 things that they can do to aid them in their journey of healing?
Yeah. So I think one thing that I try to remember is there's the quote, survived 100% of your worst days. And I really try to repeat that over and over in my head. Christy, can you still hear me?
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit. I thought it was my Bahamian Wi-Fi. I can hear you though. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was saying the quote that you have survived 100% of your worst days. And so I really rely on that quote to give me the inspiration to move on to another day and face another thing. But one thing that I heard was basically that we here in this human life, and you said this to me during one of our sessions, was that I was looking for physical answers to spiritual questions. And I had to realize that I had to develop and foster a new relationship with my husband that wasn't in a physical form. And I, and for me, that has been like looking for the signs. Raquel made me write a gratitude list, thanking him for everything that he gave me while he was here and everything that I still have as a result of having that relationship with him. And I think most importantly is there's no timeline for healing the grief. And like I said, there are days when I have really hard days and I feel them. And I felt a lot of pressure initially to heal fast because I have kids, I have to keep moving. But, I think that it's really important to take your time and to find the resources that are available to assist you through the process.
So Renee, not Renee, Raquel is on here. She in the background. So let's talk about moving through, right? Because, I hear some people be like, oh, you should be grieving for 7 years. And, I'd be like, get the freak out of here. That's a long time to be, because you're going to have high highs and then you're going to have the medium, which is what we were trying to work to like get you here. And then you'd be like, boop, and then you hit the bottom, but you know what it's like to like get back up to like the even keeled energy was the work. It's like, all right, Renee, you like down here on at the bottom of the ocean. We're going to pull you out. Dry your hair off because you're successful, right? And now get you to maintain this level of energy that you'll go up. And then when you get down, you know how to get back up. But some people, I've seen the advice of, you should expect to be down here for 7 years.
Yeah.
Right. What is because I could always say that's a lie. But of course, I haven't lost anybody that close to me, right? That I was married to. So what advice do you have for people who have been told that? Because you always want to create a new narrative in these streets about what's possible.
Right. During our initial call, like I said, I was about 1.5 years out, and you said within 6 weeks, you're going to feel better. Like it was a guarantee. And literally that's what made me sign up, because I'm like, well, what do I have to lose? 6 weeks? Like, I hope I do feel better in 6 weeks. And it was true. Like the work that we did in the group was truly transformative in that amount of time. And there was still work to do, and I'm still continuing on this process. But I was so grateful that I didn't have to live in this, because I truly was on autopilot. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to continue to do my job, and I'm just going to raise these kids. And it was like, I was going to have this just very dull life. And you said to me, like, what if the second half of your life is better than the first? And at first, when you said that, I'm like, I felt a lot of guilt, because I'm, like I had this great partner, he's now passed, and I don't want him to think that, my time with him was any less than my future. But then I realized, like, yes, like I deserve to have a great second half of my life. I deserve to be happy, and my kids deserve that. Like, what kind of mom, depressed all the time? I can't fully support them and be the mom I want to be if I'm not healed. And so I just truly appreciated that there was no set amount of time that I needed to process through my grief. It's a lifelong journey, and I will grieve for the rest of my life, but I can be happy too.
I'm getting chills that are like shooting up this side and coming out this side. Because your joy is so evident, right? Like your joy, and I'll be like this, we're going to get you right, girl. And then I'm going to interview you. I can't wait. Come on. For the other women, I'll be like, I'll be like, come on over here, Renee. We're going to hold your head. Twist you around just a little bit, but we ain't going to, WWF be like, I got to do some of the other women. But I'm so proud of your quest for joy, and because you had to look for that.
Yes.
Right. A lot of times people think like, oh, one day the dark clouds are going to go, it's raining on your hair every day. We hate that. Like that one day, magically through no work at all, the clouds are going to go away and the sun is going to start shining. Or Renee, people just don't believe that the sun will ever shine in their life again. So for you to move through that, it's like the weather. It's mostly sunny. Sometimes it rains. We stay in the house. You eat ice cream. You do whatever you do. But then you know that the sun is going to shine again and that you're going to be happy, right?
Yeah.
So I'm so proud of you for that. And one of the things I want you to touch on a little bit, when Raquel told you to write a letter. So what is that practice like in the moment that the trigger? Because I want, to be able to give, because this is something that we worked on with one of our other clients who lost her mom, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, write letters of gratitude, sharing the good times as opposed to drowning of what should, would have, could have. So what's that practice like for you?
Hey, Christy Rutherford here. I hope that you're enjoying the podcast so far. But what I know that you'll love even more is joining us in our private community. Join us in this private community, Money Loves Happy People, and get live and on-demand insights so you can use this information to live the life that you truly deserve. Get a raise and a promotion, no problem. Step into your purpose, no problem. Get the relationship that you deserve, no problem. Look, it's never too late to live the life that you deserve. It's never too late to live a life of total fulfillment. You just need information and inspiration to get on the path to living your greater life. So go ahead again, click on the link on around this video, join us in our private community, and change your life for the best. Take care. See you soon.
Yeah. So, I mean, when Raquel gave me that assignment, it was overwhelming. And I knew that I had to be in the right headspace to do it. And so, like my kids spent the night with family, and I really was intentional about setting aside that time. But once I started, it felt so good. And it's so true about, I was so sad, so depressed. Like, how could I lose him? Like, I lost my mom. I had a shitty childhood. And now this, like, what? What did I do in a prior life to deserve this? But then once I started writing everything that I was grateful for that we had experienced over the 7 years that we were together, it was like my heart was just so full and I could not stop writing. I think I told Raquel, I wrote 10 pages in one night. And it was the best experience because it really shifted my focus on the good as opposed to the sad and,
That's so good. That's so good. What, I want to go back to when you said, I said that you could change in 6 weeks, right? Yeah. One, you believe me. Did you really believe me? Or did you just be like, we're just going to see what happens, right? Because,
no, I believed you.
Yeah. We make big promises over here at Vision Finder International. You'd be like, we're not going to do anything slow. We're go-getters. We're leaders. You'd be like, because we can execute anything in a certification. We're going to show with excellence. You put us in a women's group, you give us a project, we're going to do it fast. Why can't we have joy fast? So talk to a little bit about that.
So once you told me that it would be a 6-month process in terms to get to this feeling better and an initial step into this joyous life, I knew I had to be committed to the process. So that meant doing the work, showing up every week for the calls, listening to all the videos, which I loved. And so it was really being committed to the process and not selling myself short, because I knew that there was a tried and true method that you had created and implemented and had seen results in order for you to make that kind of promise, right? So I was like, well, she told me in 6 weeks. So I expect in 6 weeks, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to look better. And then I think I think my 6-week program ended right before the Atlanta event. And I showed up and you're like, who is this? And I truly had changed in terms of how I looked, how I felt, how I was showing up in spaces. And it was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, wait, Renee, God, dog, you fine girl. Right? Screaming at you. I'm literally screaming. And you were like,
I have a picture and you're like,
I think I'm being harassed. I'm not sure. I know she ain't hitting on me, but I don't know what to do. This lady is screaming, oh my God, girl, you're so fine.
Exactly.
I mean, I have, we have a million pictures from that event. I always say my favorite pictures are of you on the stage, was on the stage dancing, right? To whatever the song was. And I'm like, oh my God, look at Renee. And I showed Marty. I was like, oh my God, look at Renee. She was like, oh my God, right? So did you believe, prior to February in the statement that you could be this happy? And then what advice do you have for people who don't believe that they can never have joy again?
Yeah. So I think a lot of widows see, especially if you have a really good marriage, which I think I did, is like your best days are behind you. Like, okay, like I'm grateful that I had those 7 years with John, but moving forward, there's no way that I could have joy again. And when I talked to you last February, I was really in that place of like, this is it. And I couldn't even appreciate where I was in my life. I couldn't appreciate that after John died, that I purchased my first home by myself, that I furnished my first home by myself. All these accomplishments that I was continuing to attain, I couldn't be in a place of appreciating that success because I was so focused on the past. And during one of our sessions, you made an analogy to like, I was holding on to like at the bottom of the sea, like holding on to John and like scratching the bottom of the surface of the ocean, like, don't go, don't go. Even if he was like destined, was like, leave me. And with that, I wasn't able to see what was, and I think that was really holding me back from experiencing joy. And I get it. And it's so sad that you lose your person, but there's more life to live.
So I don't know if that's my internet. Wait a minute. Hold on, Renee. Is that? Let me check my phone. Is that my internet or your internet? You know I'm in the Bahamas. Be like, I always got some bootleg internet. I want you to back up just a little bit. You said when you were at the bottom of the sea, like scratching to say, can you go back to that part? Like you're trying to hold on and you don't want him to go. Go back to that part and recap that.
Yeah. So what I was saying was you were explaining to me that I was holding on to this past life that and wanting so badly to live in that moment as opposed to seeing what was ahead for me.
So how have you, because you talked about, working through and then understanding and now having this new relationship, which Abraham, Esther Hicks talks about her integration with, losing her husband, Jerry, like, we're gonna dip into that just a little bit, not that far, because we don't want the saints to be freaked out. But what has it been like to integrate the spirit realm with the physical and where you are right now? Like, you want to talk just a little bit about, like, so it's not like because you're young, right? Mm-hmm. You're not haggard with one tooth. Like, you can run game on the masses if you want to, Renee, right? But there is so, like, you can, if you choose when the time is right, to be available for like the next love, because you're still here, right? We're still existing. So what has that experience been like to integrate, your husband, where you don't have to choose? You'd be like, oh, if I move on, it's because I'm leaving him behind. It's like, no, it can be a part of the process. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I truly enjoy Abraham Hicks, and it really has helped me to frame how I should look at this, transition of life, and that our person never truly dies. Like, they transition on to the next thing, in the spiritual realm. And so what I have developed is being able to continue to have a close relationship with my husband, but in a different way. It's not in a physical sense, but, I look for signs. They're all over, which is so comforting. I'm raising our children. So when something difficult comes up, I write letters and I try to, hear him. And, it has really been comforting to transition to this new type of relationship. And if there are, any widows who are watching this, there are little things that I've done to keep my husband close. So my necklace is my wedding ring that I had transformed into a necklace. So I didn't feel comfortable continuing to wearing it as a ring, but I feel that he's close to me by wearing my ring around my neck. So there's just little, and for the kids, I had his favorite t-shirts made into pillows that they sleep with every night. So it's like just little things that still keep him very close to us and connected that I think are important.
Well, they're little things, but they're massive, right? Like, we think that we need this one big thing to make the transformation. And it's actually just the one big thing is a culmination of a bunch of small things that, we're not sure whether or not they're going to be significant, and they are. Right. So last question, what advice do you have for women who are barely hanging on?
Yeah.
And they're wondering whether or not they should work with us over here at Vision Finder International. What advice do you have for them?
So my advice is honestly I felt divinely led to you, Christy. And I think you have to be intuitive enough to know when there are signs and when people are placed into your life at a certain moment for a certain purpose. And when you see that and when there's an opportunity, so if you're watching this and you have felt led to Christy, I think you just have to trust, and based on, my interview, other interviews, that Christy is the truth and she will get you to that next step. But you have to be committed to doing the work and understand that you may feel uncomfortable, but that it's only for your good and that it'll only lead you to where you're destined to be in life, which is to be joyous, to have a happy life, to have, these relationships with wonderful women. So I'm just very thankful for Christy, for the program, everything.
Well, thank you, ma'am. So we're going to close. Don't hang up, Renee.
Okay.
So everyone, I hope that you've enjoyed this. Again, Renee, your click is here. I know they're going to watch the replay, so you'll see them blowing up the comment section. Raquel is here. So I'm so, grateful for your journey. And then you trusting, because I talk to a lot of women. They don't believe me. I'd be like, you can. You walking around like that. You don't need to walk around like that. You can be happy, girl. They be like, you full of shit. That's not true. I want to hold on to it. I'd be like, well, all right, we'll keep it moving then. But, I'm really proud that you believe me, because that takes trust. And then, trusting yourself in the process and doing the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But always get to always prove me right. I told you, girl.
Yeah.
But now I would say more so, Renee, being an example to your children of how they can show up. Does that make sense? In the world, and being an example to other people in the world who've lost someone, because it's tough, right? So I can't wait to see, what's next as you move through this journey and continue to see you get happier and happier. So, all right, y'all, take care.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave us a review if you love this episode. Follow Christy on Instagram and LinkedIn. And don't forget to get her free gift by texting Change Now, all one word. Again, Change Now to 66866. Until next time, go out and win bigger.